hope everyone enjoyed their lunch and hopefully got over to Ribfest like we did. I'd like to first start off by thanking our sponsors. Without them, we wouldn't be here today, and all the volunteers that put work into this. This is the slide to let us know to record. I think Solomon...
Oh, we did. No, it's in there.
It was red. Do we want it red?
Yeah.
Okay, let's restart.
Double certainty.
Perfect.
We can fix this.
So welcome to Twigging Out with Drupal templates. My name is Sarah Campbell, and I'm a web developer at Coldfront Labs. And today we're going to dive into Drupal's template language, Twig. At the end of the session, you should have a better understanding of what Twig is and how to leverage it to its full potential. A little bit of what we're going to be going over is why we use Twig, theme suggestions, Twig syntax, reusable components, inheritance and block-based overwrites, and debugging. So what is Twig and why do we use it? Twig is an open source templating language that allows us to blend HTML structure with dynamic content to handle the presentation layer of our web application. It has a straightforward syntax it uses straightforward syntax to understand and use, like variables, functions, filters, and control structures like if statements and for loops. Twig was adopted into Drupal for many reasons. It introduces auto-escaping and sanitizes all HTML for improved security. It's cleaner and simpler than the previous PHP templates, and it improves the performance by having all the templates being compiled into optimized PHP code. So in short, it's secure, fast, flexible, and it doesn't hurt your eyes when looking at the code. So once you get your site all set up, there's a couple config changes we can make to help our development process go a little smoother. Templates are loaded onto every page of a Drupal site, which makes them an important part of our site. And we want to make sure that nothing is slowing it down. This is where Twig caching comes in. When a template is being used, it needs to be compiled. Twig converts it to PHP, and then it stores it into a caching directory. The next time that file needs to be used, it's going to look in there. And every file has a generic, unique key that Twig gives it so that it's able to understand, or it's able to realize whether or not there's been an update made to that template or not. And if there has been an update made, it's going to recompile it and override the one in the cache directory. Caching can be turned on or off in your services file or in the config in the Drupal UI under the development. In production sites, you want to have caching set to true so that you are improving the performance and you're not slowing down the server load. There's sometimes you'll want to use it in development mode where you can turn caching off. One case would be if caching is disabled, you're able to eliminate it as a potential source of a bug, since you know you're always going to have the most up-to-date version of that file. The next one is Twig Debugging, which is a fan favorite. It gives us a couple different things that we can work with, and if you don't use it in the site, I definitely recommend. So it gives us the option to see what variables are available within each template, which we'll talk about a bit later. And then it also allows us to see theme suggestion names that we can use to overwrite different templates. Just like the caching, this can be turned off or on in your services file or in the development config in the Drupal UI. Make sure in production environments this is set to false so that we're not having any security risk, since it is exposing sensitive information about your site, like file paths and errors that can be exploited to hackers to find vulnerabilities. And it can also just slow down your site since there's an extra processing for the debug. Now that we have our environment set up, let's talk about how Drupal knows what template to use on each page. So templates define the HTML structure and logic that's rendering different parts of the Drupal site, like the pages, the nodes, and the blocks. Twig follows a flexible naming convention, and understanding it can help you organize and maintain your templates to be more efficient. It uses a template suggestion system where it looks for a file based on the context and different factors like the user role, the content type, and the view mode. And if there's no files found, then it'll default back to Drupal's base file. And those are the fundamental structures of various components on the site. The templates, supposed to hit this a while ago. The templates file extension is .html.twig, and our naming, we use lowercase and we use hyphens to separate. So if we take a look at this example at the bottom, it's pointing to a edit page for node 1, and under it gives us 4 different file names that we can use to override it. The bottom one being the base file, page.html.twig. If we edit this one, we're going to edit every page on the site, which can be used for like footers and headers. And if we go up one, the page node, that will be editing the template for every node page. And one above that, it has the actual ID of the node. So this one would specifically only be editing this page and this one only, which doesn't come in too often, but you can use it if you have like one page that only needs a specific block, then you can use it in a template. And then the one above that is the page node edit, which would change the template for all edit pages of the nodes. So that can be a little confusing, and that's where themes debug comes in, like I was talking about earlier. It allows you to inspect your source, and you find the content that you want to change the template for, and there'll be some file name suggestions listed above. These are listed in most specific first to least specific, and the bottom one is the base template. This is the one that you're going to want to copy when it's time to override. So above that, you see a theme hook. In this case, it's a node. That's what you can use to create different hooks and create your own suggestions, which we'll go over. And below these file name suggestions, there's a begin output, which tells you exactly what template is being used and where it's coming from. So once you find the file you want to override, you can copy the base file into your theme's template directory, and you can rename it if you do want it to be more specific, or you can leave it the same. In this case, we're using our template from our Flossy theme, which is in the layout directory, and we are overriding the base page template. So once you have your file modified, you can save it and re-render your cache, or clear your cache, and then it allows it to output your new template. And to verify that, like we talked about in the slide before, you can see that there's a begin output where you're going to see your new one coming from. So whenever you have a specific need for a special template, you can create a hook. This hook can be used to add different suggestions based on different criteria that's added into your hook. The hook is hook theme suggestion hook alter, and you want to change the hook theme to your module or template name, and then the other hook in there is going to be the hook that we talked about in here, where it says theme hook node. That's exactly what you'll put in here. So anytime a node template is being loaded, it's going to give you these suggestions. So in this example here, we are checking if a user is logged in, and if they are, we are adding the node authenticated template suggestion to the list, which we can then use to style a page where a user is logged in. Now that we know a little bit about how it works, let's talk about the Twig syntax and different ways to use it throughout our template. Twig has 3 identifiers, also known as delimiters. The first one is the say something. This is double curly braces, and anything put in between here will be output, whether it's your variables, your strings, and stuff like that. Your next one is your do something identifier, which is curly brace %. As it sounds, this is used for putting some logic in to do something. As an example, we have a for loop going through different items, and for each item, it's creating a list item for it. And the last identifier is the comment one. This is used to create a comment in our template. It can be a single line, multi-line, or even just part of a line. So those are identifiers. We're going to go over a couple things that we can do inside of them. So tags are used to control the flow and logic of your template. They allow you to include dynamic behavior like if statements and for loops, and they're a core part of our templates because it allows us to apply logic without having to embed any PHP code into it. As an example here, there's a couple tags. We have the set tag, which lets you set a variable within your template to be used. There is an apply tag, which allows you to apply a filter, which we'll talk about, to a chunk of code. Any code in between these identifiers are going to be the filter will apply to. And the bottom one, we have an if statement that's checking if online is equal to false. And if it is, it'll let the user know that our website's in maintenance mode. So there's lots of other tags to use. There's some more used than others. A couple other popular ones are the with tag, which allows you to create an inner scope. Any variable set inside that scope won't be able to be used outside of it. And then the block tag. This is used in templates as a placeholder to let a template know that a child template is able to override that block. This will be used when we use embed. We'll talk about soon. So those are tags, and now we're going to go over filters. So filters can be used to modify or format different data in your template. They're applied to variables to transform the output before render. And like filters, they can also accept arguments, and they are separated from the variable by a pipe symbol. You can also chain filters together, and whatever the output of the first filter is will be what the next filter is applying to. A couple examples here. We have the default filter, which allows you to give a default for any reason that your variable you're trying to output isn't defined. The one below that, we have chain filters, where our variable is going to be truncated to 20 characters, and then the title filter will apply, where it'll create it'll make the first letter of every word capital. And then our last example here is a filter used in a tag. So it's checking if the length of users is greater than 10, and then any of the logic inside there will be applied if so. Just like tags, there's lots of other filters that you can use as well. Some other popular ones are upper and lower, which convert your variable to uppercase or lowercase. There's replace, which is used to replace part of a string with a substring. And then there's also the join filter, which is pretty popular, that allows you to join different sequences. And you can also pass it an argument which you want to separate them, whether it be a comma or a pipe symbol, or you can leave it blank and they will just join with a space. So sometimes you're going to have and the last one we'll talk about is functions. Functions are used to give a little bit more flexibility to your template, and it allows you to, and it plays a crucial role in enhancing just the functionality of it. Like a tag, functions are placed in the do something eliminator, but can also be placed in the say something, since you can return a variable that can be outputted. A couple examples here are the random function that will return a random item, whether it be an item in a sequence, and character in a string, or a random integer. The second one is the date function. This date function takes whatever is the argument and it transforms it to a date that can be used to compare. An issue with this one though, you have to make sure the the argument you're passing in is a time and date format from PHP, otherwise you will run into different errors. And the last function here is the block function, which allows you to place a block from another template into your own. You'd pass it the name of the block, and then you'd pass it also the name of the template that the block is coming from. Just like filters, there's a lot of other ones, and sometimes you're going to need to create your own if they don't suit your needs. Drupal has done that for some of theirs that we can also implement into our templates. A couple examples of theirs are the attach library that allows you to attach a library to one template and one template only, so that you don't have excess code everywhere that you're not using. The second one, we have a URL function that generates a URL from the passed-in argument. Example here is it's going to link you to the view, the front page view. And then there's also a link function that allows you to pass in the string you want the link to be, the link itself, and then additional attributes that you can use throughout the link. And as an example, you can see that it's just outputted as normal HTML. And if those still don't suit your need, then you can create your own custom function. For this, we do need a custom module. And once you have created that, you can create a directory source twig inside of there. And then we want to extend our twig abstract extension. I should have not cut it off so much so you can see what we're using, but those are just Twig's class there. So once you extend the abstract extension, you can create your function that's going to return all of your new custom functions. So in our return, we have our new Twig function, and then we're passing it the name of our function, custom function. I should have picked a different name. I'm saying function a lot. And we're also passing it in array with this and also the function in our class. So after you have that, you can then create your actual function, named custom function, and we passed it the parameters. And you can add any logic that you want to be applied to the function when it's used in your template. We just have it returning a string with your parameters. So once you have this created, you need to set up a new service. And to do that, you need to create a service file in your module, which is the name of your module, .services.yaml. And then you can give it a ID. So we have services, our services ID is our custom module name, .twig.extension. And then we take the class and we point it to the one we made. And then we also have to give it a tag to let it know that it is a Twig extension. And once we're done that, we can then clear the cache, and our filters or our functions should be available to use in the template. So this specific example was for creating a custom function, but this can also be done to create custom filters. It would be about the same. There's just a couple lines of code you have to change, but everything else is straightforward and stays the same. Now let's talk about Twig inheritance. This is a powerful feature as it allows you to create a hierarchy of templates where child templates can modify and extend parent templates. Similar to object-oriented programming, where a class can extend another class and get its properties and methods from the parent class. Twig inheritance helps maintain a consistent layout of design across your site, which allows individual pages or sections to customize specific parts of the layout. This makes our templates more modular and reusable. So the first one I want to go over is the include function. So this allows you to include another template into your own. It has access to the child template has access to all the variables in the parent template. And for an example here, we can see we have a header file, a footer file, and a page file. And we want to put the header and footer into our page file. So we just use the include function and add our file name. You can also add additional variables to that. So if you see here, we have our include, we're including the header, but we're also including it with some additional variables, the brand name, social media array, and a hex color. And then in our parent template, the header, we can see that we are styling our background with the hex color. We add the brand name to the title, and we join all our social medias in a paragraph with a pipe symbol. The extend tag is used to extend a template from another and allows blocks to be overridden. Just like the include function, the variables are available in your child template. In the file, the first tag needs to be the extend tag. The only thing you can do when extending a file is override its blocks. You can't create code outside of those blocks or you're going to run into some errors. So to understand that a little more, we can see here that our block.html.twig, that's our base template. And that's the one that we want to extend. So if that's being used, if we're in a news block, we want to use this bottom text, and it's going to extend the base block. And we want to override the headline in it, so we just have to open up the block tag, and we give it the name, headline, and then we add whatever content we want to override. All we did here is we added a div around it with the headline news class. You can see that we didn't override the related block, and by not doing that means it's just going to default back to whatever the block is doing in the base template. But what if we want to include a template into another block? Well, we can't use include because we can't override the blocks in there, and we can't use embed since we're already in a div. So this is where, or sorry, we can't use extend because we're already in a div. This is where embed comes into play. This tag combines behaviors of the include function and the extend tag. It allows blocks to be overridden, but it also takes arguments like the include tag. As we can see here in the top image, we have a vertical boxes template where it has two different divs, and both of those have a block in each of them. And we want to place those into our template at the bottom. So in our div with the class news, we can embed that file, and then we can override whichever blocks we want. We're overriding both of them in this case, the top and bottom, with some content. So that's pretty straightforward. And sometimes you can also embed different classes, or you can embed different templates and also override those blocks because they can be used in conjunction with extend. So here we are extending a file with the base layout. And if you remember, extending a file means you have to, the only thing you can do is override the blocks within it. So there is a content block in the base layout that we're going to extend, or that we're going to override. And we are overriding it with another template. So you can see that we're embedding the alert template into this block, and it also has an additional variable. We're using the with tag, and it's the type variable with the key info. And then inside of that, we want to override the content block that's in the alert template. And we just override it with a paragraph tag. It can get kind of confusing, and I shouldn't have named both of these blocks content to explain it a little better. But extend allows you to do everything, but sometimes you don't always want that. Embed allows you to do everything. Extend would be the one that's used most throughout development, but extend allows you to add a little bit more functionality. And the last thing I want to go over is how to debug in Twig. Twig has very helpful errors, which come in handy when you run into an issue. It'll let you know when files or variables don't exist, and it'll give you details about how to pin down the problem. Like I talked about at the beginning, we're able to view different variables that are available inside a template. There's a couple of different ways to do this. You could go into your UI and figure out what content you're trying to edit and find the fields and find the variable names to that. But there's two easier ways. So the first, if you have Xdebug installed and enabled, you're able to create a breakpoint in your template. You just use the double curly brace with the breakpoint function. And when this template is loaded onto any page, the script is going to pause, and you'll be redirected to your code, where you can then see all the context and variables available within that template. You can also do the same thing with Twig's own function called dump function. You can put that in between curly braces, and it'll dump it all onto your page, all your context. You can also add a argument, a different variable, and that'll give you all the information for that specific variable. So that's Twig in a nutshell, a fast, secure, flexible templating engine that allows us to have an organized system with modular templates that are straightforward to override. I hope you all enjoyed this presentation, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Perfect, no questions. Oh no. The breakpoint one? So that's Xdebug. If you have that installed and enabled, you're able to just add a breakpoint function in your template, like we do with PHP files and stuff like that, where you can actually physically add a breakpoint. It's the same thing, you're just actually writing in the function. Exactly. So you have your double curly brace, and then breakpoint with your parentheses, close parentheses, and then as soon as that template is loaded on any page, your script is paused, and you are access all the variables.
It's worth noting that doesn't work out of the box. It's just excellent. You need the Twig Xdebug button.
Oh yeah, well we have this enabled, like in our. So yeah, that's Twig debug. Or that's Twig. Oh, one more. Sorry. Yeah. So include is what you're going to use if all you're doing is taking the file and putting it in. There's no blocks in that file. There's nothing to override. So that's like a pretty common one to use. And then extend is whenever you want to include another template, but there's also a block in that template that you want to override. So then you're able to extend it, which you're including it, and then you can override that. What embed does is basically allows you to place this into a div. So if you see at the bottom photo, we're in a div with the class use, and we're embedding it. You can't actually do that with extend, because you can't have code outside of the extend. If you're extending something, the only thing in that file is going to be your extend, and then your block overrides for that.
So if you, for example, instead of using different blocks, they have the same issue, I can see that. You can, for example, the same block, you can embed it, and you can extend it, override it for different uses.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, like if you look at the bottom one, this would be you'd be extending your block. So that's like that's your base file. So then once you have that, you can edit any, or you can modify any blocks that are defined already in there. Okay.
Sorry, I don't have a question. There's a lot going on in this, so it's very interesting. Okay. Man, sorry. I was going to have a question about the slides, but considering my next season. Two questions. You'll be sharing your deck?
I will, yeah.
And is there like a tool that you can use to like sort of track and manage all the experiences?
I'm gonna go back to Nick on that one and see what he says. Thank you for being here today.
Why me?
Because you're the person I go to when I have questions.
That would be an extremely useful tool.
Yeah.
I don't think one exists. Totally. I would like it would really cool to have a visual map once it's setting what. The best I can give you is just start at one file, look at the files extending, go there, and follow the chain, unfortunately. The old fashioned. The old fashioned. You learn a lot.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming, guys.